Hi, my name is Matthew Carpenter. My wife, my family, and I, we attend the New Life campus in Conway. And today I wanted to share some wisdom with you about the ways that we care for and connect and love the people that are around us, to increase the influence that we have in people's life, to have hard conversations, and to walk through difficult seasons of life. You see, my story has been a place of God's redemption and restoration. If you need a shot of faith today and you know me, call me and ask me, and we'll go get a cup of coffee, and I'll show you how God is still in the business of restoration and redemption. But today I wanted to share with you about a character in the Bible who I feel like inhabits some of these things that allows us to have influence in people's life. His name's Daniel. And we all have heard of Daniel in the lion's den, or Daniel, his friends being thrown into the fire and being saved. But I wanted to introduce the book of Daniel as a love story. If you haven't read the book of Daniel or have read it, I want you to reread it under the context of it being a love story. You see, Daniel was brought into captivity under bondage, and the Israelite people they had sinned and they got taken over by a whole new king and kingdom. And Daniel got brought into this new kingdom. And he had the ability very on in his life to start compromising his faith, to give in to sin. They were trying to get him ready for the influence that he was going to have in kings' lives. And the people that were over him, the leaders of that time, were telling him, hey, here's some things that you've got to do, but it went against the laws of God at that time to eat a certain way. And Daniel decided in his mind that he wouldn't do that, and he asked for permission to do something different. And they granted it to him, and it set him apart from everybody else of his day. And he eventually, him and his friends, they got promoted. His unwillingness to be compromised in his faith and to give in to the sin of that day. And because of that influence, they started to see the redemption of God in their life. And then a couple chapters later, they had the opportunity to be set apart again. They were asked to bow down to the image of this day. The king had made this big golden image of himself, said everybody bow down to it, and they refused, and they get thrown into the fire. God comes in, rescues them, and saves them. And changed how the king had saw some things at that time. Just an amazing story of God's rescue in that. But at that time, they could have given in, but they did not yield their bodies up to the idols of that day, to what everybody was bowing down to. And so Daniel got to experience God's restoration and redemption because he was willing to follow God and not give in to sin or to bow down to idols. And in that, his heart turned in love, not just towards the Israelites, towards his people, but it turned in love. He loved the kings. These were the kings that held his people captive in bondage, that most likely issued the decrees that killed many of the people that he knew growing up. But he loved them. And if you read the book of Daniel, you'll see that he gave room for God to work in their life. And he honored the kings. He didn't just give them words out of bitterness or hurt. If you read the way that Daniel taught, he loved the kings. And I believe that helped shift some kings and kingdoms of that day. And one of my very favorite parts is Daniel 11:1. Under one of the four kings that Daniel got to serve, it says, in the first year of Darius the Mede, I arose to be an encouragement and protection for him. Or different versions said, I stood up to be an encouragement and protection for him. It's like this, it's the standing up like a guard. He wanted to come protect this king, be an encouragement for him. So I wanted to ask a few questions of your life today, because Daniel found himself in a position that nobody else had in that day to be with kings. And you are in positions in your life to where you have influence over people in your life that nobody else does. Your kids, your spouse, your job, your community, your nation, leaders. That's yours. And what story of redemption of restoration is God in the business of in your life today? And so I want to ask 3 questions because God has a story for you. Number 1, are there areas of compromise, of sin in your life today that you need to repent of? That you need to go find a small group of people who have influence in your life that can help start to shift your story? Number 2, are there idols in your life that you're bowing down to, that people are bowing down to today? Money, power, position, social media, food, addictions, a job. What idols are there that maybe you need to repent of and turn? Ask the Lord today. Say, Lord, what idols are there in my life today? And maybe fast from those for a week and have God start to reveal some things. Surround yourself with a few people who have influence. And then number 3, as those things start to break free, those bondages start to break free, the third question is, or the third strengthening here is, ask God to increase your love for the people that are around you, to grant you the humility and courage to open your mouth and increase your actions in how you love the people around you, because you have the place of influence that nobody else has, because God has placed you in that place. I want to tell you a quick story and then wrap it up. This last week, there was a lot of snow and there was a lot of ice. I guess you would call that a lot. To us, it was. So we live out in the country, and we have a really steep hill, which was awesome for sledding. It was real icy, and my kids had a blast. But they decided at one time they're going to play King of the Hill, and you had to climb up this big steep hill. And once you got to the top, if anybody else came up, you got to knock them down, and they were laughing. But my 5-year-old daughter, she wasn't having as much fun because she could not get up the hill. And I kept calling up to her, Mariella, you can do it. I can't do it, Daddy, I can't do it. And I said, Mariella, you can do it. But she was wore out and couldn't do it. So I thought, okay, I'm gonna climb down. So I crunched through the ice, and it took me a long time because I wanted to make footsteps for Mariella to be able to walk up this big steep hill. And so I crunched all the way down, and then I walked all the way back up, and I called back down to her. I said, Mariella, walk up again. I can't do it, Daddy, I can't do it. She was stuck at the bottom. And so I thought, okay, this is not good. The boys wouldn't help her up. She kept trying to go up her own path, kept sliding back down. Every time she'd try to get up, she'd slide back down. So I walked down to her. I moved her over to where my footsteps were. And I put my hand behind her and started helping her walk up my footsteps. And the further she went up this hill, the more courage that she got as she was walking up this hill. And she didn't really feel my hand behind her back, but she was making her way up this hill. And as she got to the very top, and you could see her excitement change, and she yelled, "I'm the queen!" And we all started laughing. And I could not think of a better analogy for today. I don't know what story you're in, but I want to encourage you that you have a place of influence. As you see God redeem you from sin and from idols, to turn around and look down in love towards the other people and walk down to where they're at. And it's okay to get messy and to walk behind them. You may have to blaze a trail in breaking generational curses that you are doing something different than your whole family has ever done before. And you get to turn around and you get to help people walk the path that you have walked. And there's a statement that someone wrote that says, those who've experienced the bondage breaking power of God are called to share the source of such power with those still held in captive. And so I want to call you into that today, to the influence that you and you alone have, that in this season, specifically in this season, there's a lot of fear surrounding drawing back and pulling and protecting. But God has called us not to have a spirit of fear, but of courage and of a sound mind. And I want to encourage you today that you are called for such a time as this, for the influence that you have in people's lives, to allow God to break the bondage of sin and of idols in your life, and then turn around with a heart full of love and help them walk up that hill, because you don't know if you're pushing up the next king, the next queen, the next leader that can shift kings and shift kingdoms, that you're raising your kids and doing your job differently. That is what you are called to be. You are called for such a time as this. Do not shrink back in fear. And I hope that today that this was an encouragement to you. I hope that this was a blessing to you. And that's all I have for today.